Hello, everyone. The next assignment is the last one. Everyone rejoice, the semester is coming to an end. Um, the project is based around designing a visual identity for a company, and this can be a fictional company, or if you happen to have, in the event maybe you own a small business, it can be for your company too. I'm open to that. It's important, though, to remember that we're not redesigning something that already exists. So you can't pick McDonald's or anything along those lines. I've produced a couple different resources for you. One of the presentations, the one that says logo presentation, this is actually Flash based. So if you click on the slides, there will be a little bit of subtle animation and help you deal with the ideas that you need to think about. When you're building a logo, you want to try and identify with, who's purchasing or using that item or that service that that particular business or company or individual offers. So certain things like, who is the audience? Who are you selling your products and services to? What image is that company trying to project, and will it be memorable? These are important things that you want to take into consideration when you are developing a logo. A good example is if you think of Nike. Nike, the athletic brand. Who is their audience? Their audience is anyone who's an athlete. They sponsor soccer players and cheerleaders and football players and pretty much any type of athleticism. But it's not just for pro athletes, it's also for the people that are jogging for the first time and school groups and that sort of thing. What image is their company trying to project? Fitness and athleticism and victory. Nike is also the name of the Greek goddess of victory, which is the idea behind the name of it. And will it be memorable? Well, if you think about it, they've had a very successful stint. Everyone recognizes the swoosh. So that's a good example of, you want to think about that business or that brand that you're going to be developing, and how are you going to make it stick out from other brands that might be similar. All right. Part of your assignment pertains to, is a logo going to be recognizable in both black and white as well as in color? One thing to remember when developing that sort of thing, if you're doing printing, it's cheaper to print in black and white than it is in full color, so your logo will need to have good enough contrast to work in both versions. All right, so this lecture has a bunch of really great options. It goes over color, things you want to think about, sort of the stages that you might want to take before settling on your final product. And you will want to take at least note of these stages as you work to help develop your final product. And I would like everyone to show me their logo before they jump headfirst into building all of the other bits and pieces of your design. Okay, some logos last the test of time. The golden arch has been in McDonald's brand for a long time, but sometimes brands need redesigns also. So think about, these are just things that you'll want to think about. I've also got this one's a PDF, but it's a lecture just on publication design in general. And it covers both publications in terms of written items, but it covers a lot of really good layout rules as well. In terms of, don't worry about it in regards to designing a magazine, because that's not what we're doing, but think about the balance of some of the visuals. This bit down here in relation to the 4 basic design principles are going to be where it really applies to you, because here they're building a business card. Guess what you're going to be building? Business cards. And it's going to give you visuals of what doesn't work well and what does work well and why. So pay attention to the spacing, the way that color elements are grouped to one another, like elements are grouped with one another. And if you look, there's an equal amount of space between different elements. So these are going to be areas that you'll want to take into consideration. So alignment, proximity, repetition, same fonts, same color choices, and contrast are all going to be things that I'm going to look for. All right. So look over both of these and also consider using a grid layout, because that'll help quite a bit in helping make sure that you lay your information out in ways that look good. Good spaces, that sort of thing. We'll be using guides in Photoshop quite a bit in order to do this. So definitely take a look at these. There's going to be a lot of terms that are going to be useful, like grids, positive and negative space, the alignment and proximity and all that good stuff, hierarchy. But not only do I want you to look at these lectures, do some research on brand design and logo design. One place that I love doing research at for design related stuff is Pinterest. I typed in 3 terms, design, brand, and logo, and I get tons of options. And some of it'll be like tips to do your own logo design, examples of other people's designs. Let's see. So if you're wanting something minimal, these are all super minimal, and they're all like, I think, animal shapes. So like you've got a rhino, a little whale, king elephant. And again, these can be applied to many different things, but they're super simple. The idea isn't overly creative. It isn't something super illustrative. These are all, for the most part, very geometric shapes, sometimes one shape nested inside of another, but not overly tricky. I like the bunny with the cutout of the carrot. So I would definitely say poke around. If you're on Pinterest, make like a design folder just so you can kind of collect your ideas all in one spot. That's what I do. And look at how other people have developed their brand. You know, from the business cards to the way that the coffee cups are designed. These are all going to be things that you can take into consideration. You know, look at, they've got their little funny squid guy with, he's got like a fork for the bottom legs, which is kind of clever. And they made like a canvas bag, and then paper bags, and disposable silverware, and all that good stuff. And these are going to be things that you will want to take into consideration, because you are designing for your assignment at least 10 different objects. You've got your poster and your flyer, you've got your logo and your slogan, you've got your business card, letterhead, which is like the paper that you'd write a letter to, an envelope, a shirt, a bag, and then you've got an additional item also that's going to be your choice based on what your business is about. So like hypothetically, if you were picking a restaurant and you wanted to make disposable silverware, this could be a good example of that. So lots of really great options. This one's kind of cool. Brand logos that have hidden messages. So the A to Z in Amazon is one, plus the little arrows like a smiley face, which is kind of cool. Pinterest itself is kind of pinning. So let's see, it's like a virtual pin board. So there's basically a pin being incorporated like the P. The P is supposed to be like a stylized pin, like a thumbtack kind of. So these are kind of neat in that these all have secret messages, sort of, but it's nice to view. I like these guys too, where it'll show you the logo and then show you a brand layout of different items. So you've got your envelope, your letterhead, your business card. This looks like some sort of pamphlet. Here's the website design on tablet. Here's the same pamphlet opened up. Tag, CD, notebook, coffee cup, and I guess this is shipping tape. But it gives you a really nice kind of visual of what that brand put together would end up looking like. So these are all great ideas. But before you get to this point, you need to figure out what your business is. What is it going to do? What is it going to represent? Who's your clientele? And then once you get to that point, you will be able to decide what the visual is going to look like. So when you think of this brand, it's very whimsical and fun and colorful. You want to think, what type of people are going to be using this business or this product or this service. And by contrast, comparing that bright, colorful stuff to this one, it's a lot more serious, it's monochromatic, a little bit simpler. How is this brand different from the other brand in regards to their target audience? So do lots of research. I'm going to be checking in with everyone on a weekly basis just to see where you stand in relation to your designs. But you can find a lot of really great resources. Even just typing in a Google search for logo design, going to images, just like everything else. You'd be shocked at all the different options that you have. Or, let's see, branding design. Branding design is going to give you more options because it's going to give you sort of a corporate package and show off what options you've got in terms of the way that you can lay out your information. So when it comes down to building your parts, the first thing before you build any of your other items is going to be laying out your logo design, whatever that happens to be. Now, I happen to have a pencil sketch on my drive that I will use. So when designing your logo itself, In some instances, you might bring in a photo and trace a photo. In other instances, you may decide to sketch it on a piece of paper and photograph it or scan it and then trace the sketch. Either way works. It's entirely based upon your personal preference. So, first step first, if you're building a logo, whatever that logo happens to be, you want to do this in vector. What does that mean? It means that you have to use the pen tool. All right, so I am going to take this visual here, this visual of a pencil with like a V right there, and I'm going to create my own logo based on this sketch. Now, because it's a logo and it's going to be in vector, the size of the document isn't as important, but I'd go ahead and just recommend right off the bat, make it a decent resolution. It doesn't have to be huge, but you don't want something really small that it's going to hurt your eyes just to get it taken care of. And I'm just going to, in this instance, crop the sketch a little bit just so I've got a nice, neat little area to work with. So with my pen tool, I can either fill it or I can apply a stroke. Now, because a good portion of my graphic here is going to be done with line work, I'm going to start with no fill and a stroke, and I'll pick a stroke of about 5 points. And if you're not sure if that's the right thickness, you can always draw some lines out and test. That's nice and thick. I might actually make that a little bit thinner and maybe make it 4 points. Okay. So now I'm going to trace my logo. And it doesn't have to be exact, but remember, because it's vector, I'm going to have a lot of flexibility in relation to the way that I can correct and manipulate the shapes. Some of these shapes that I'm going to be using are going to be open-ended. There we go. So if I want these to sort of taper off smoothly the way that they are, I can go ahead and just leave them open, and it's going to create separate shapes. And if I want to, continue where I left off, I can do that too. Now you can see here I have to deselect each time. Otherwise it will make sort of a zigzag. Okay, so I've got all of my shapes. I'm going to move them a little bit if I need to. And I do need to name these. Oops, need to include my little triangular bit down there. Now for this little guy down here, I'm still going to use my pen tool, but I'll switch to having a fill also. And maybe I'll turn the stroke off just so that it fills this space with black rather than giving it an outline. So I'll just drag it down so that it fills in because I want it to look sort of like a pencil. Now I'm going to label everything. This is my pencil tip. I'll call this my V because it's that V shape at the bottom. I'll call this one my L because it's kind of like an L. And then left line, middle line, right. There we go. So there's my vector right off the bat. Another option that I've got for my path, you can see these have like a really square end. They're very sharp looking. But I do have the option to give them a rounded cap. So you look how those went square and then I rounded this one. So I would actually like to round all of my caps if I'm able to do so. And I don't, there we go, caps. There we go. And that softens those edges a little bit. I can also do the same thing to my corners. So you see how my pencil went from being very sharp to kind of rounded and graphic. So that's nice. It's kind of soft. So I could say, all right, there's my logo. I'm happy with it. We're going to leave it just like that. Not too bad. It kind of almost looks like an arrow in a sense, like it's a pencil that's falling quickly. So I enjoy that. But if I wanted to, I could also add some color. So I'm going to actually make a new path completely. But I want to fill it with a gradient. And I want that gradient to go rather than black. I want to pick the color of like a number 2 pencil. So see how it fades from number 2 pencil to nothing? I'm going to, oops. No stroke, gradient fill. Number 2 pencil color. And I will have to make some small adjustments. So I'm just trying to sort of imply what the gradient should be doing. And I can always update that if I decide, you know what, not so sure about the color or the gradient or how I'd like it to look. Let's see, radial. So almost like the pencil's sort of falling. I could even do that as a with a vector if I'm not really enjoying the way that it looks. I want that sort of gradient effect, like it's disappearing. I don't know that visually it's doing what I want it to do. So I might change that shape to just have a solid fill. And then add a mask to it. That's probably what I'm going to do actually. There we go. Soft edges, of course. Hardness down, opacity up. So we'll say that's my logo. And I've got my black and white version. There we go. Black and white logo, color logo. Problem solved. Part number 1 done. If I want to incorporate some text in, let's see. Let's say it's for a private school and I want to incorporate, I want it to be Victory Academy, and the V in the pencils for Victory. Well, first what I think I'll do is I'll move everybody over. I'm gonna hide the backdrop. Let's see, play with my spacing. Looks like I had it set to italics, or maybe I want really slanted italics. I could tinker with that, but I like it a little bit more vertical. And I center aligned it, so all I have to do is line it up. So we'll say this is my logo. There we go. I've got my text portion, or I've got the icon by itself. Stands without color or with color. Either way works. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. We'll say save as, and I'll call it my logo. There we are. All right, so this is where smart objects come into play. And I'm not talking the smart object as in the way that I've been bringing in outside files, but also in relation to the way that I can maybe update other content by updating my original. So I'm going to close out of my PSD there. And we'll say I want to design a business card next. So create a new document. Remember, each of these items have their own special size. So you're only going to use US paper for a few options. The rest of them you are going to resize those elements. So a business card is 3.5 by 2.5. All right, and I'm going to leave it at 300 ppi. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. US paper will only be available as an option for a couple different items here on this list. Everything else you'll have to plug in by hand. So a business card, 3.5 inches by 2 inches. All right. You can switch the vertical and horizontal if you want a vertical business card. That's not unheard of. But anyway, it needs to be this ratio and 300 pixels per inch. So I'll say okay. All right, so I've got my template. one thing that you will want to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you use rulers to your advantage. Because one thing that can happen when designing print items, you don't want to run into a business card issue where your content is so close to the edge of the paper that hypothetically, if you were to print this in real life, it might trim off too much information. So you actually want to bring everything in at least 1/4 of an inch from the edges. This is going to be what's called in design a bleed zone, like that. All right. So in between these areas is going to be where I place my important content. So here, place, and I'll go ahead and find my logo, place my logo in, and I'll shrink it. Scoot it to one side. There we go. And I like to sort of block my content in just to make sure that I give everybody enough breathing room between the different elements. So I'm going to leave the logo on one side. Then I can plug in my information on another side. I'll go ahead and update my font to be a little less wide. Let's see. We'll say I'm the principal of this academy, hypothetically. We'll say, I'm just making up information as I go in terms of, the contact info. Unless it's a real business, like you're working for a real person as you work on these, you really don't have to worry about the content. So you can decide whether centered or left aligned is best suited. There we go. Email. And I'm just looking to have enough space. So I could hit return here, but I don't know that, I think there's too much space up top and not enough on the bottom. So sometimes I'll just opt to adjust the size of the text box. Another thing, if you want to keep things visually centered, oops. Put it back where it needs to be. Another option is you can always put in like a midline that'll help center your content in terms of where the boxes are, and then you can make adjustments based on that. So I think that's pretty close to being centered, roughly. Now, here's the perk of using smart objects for the logo aspect of things. Let's say you were doing this for a real client and they decided, oh, we don't want a yellow pencil, we want a blue pencil. And you're like, well, shoot, I have to go in and redesign all of my content. Here's one of the perks. You can double click on that smart object and it'll let you know, hey, after you edit those contents, you have to save to commit to those changes. It'll open up my original logo PSD that applies to a whole bunch of different documents. And if I make that change here, let's see, blue pencil, and I hit save, and then I close out of this guy, ta-da, blue pencil. If I had done that same thing to all of my other documents, we'll say, you know, business card, envelope, letterhead, etc., same thing. Because a smart object is linked to those other files, if you make a change to this, it updates every single other one. So the smart object aspect of things is going to be grouped inside of each of the additional files in order to ensure that any updates or changes that are made are filtered through. So if you make a last minute design change and decide, you know what, I want a completely different font, or I want to redesign my logo, or whatever the case may be, you can go in and do that and it will automatically update all of the additional content that you have brought in. So remember, and I'll post that smart object video that I did at the beginning of the term if you like, with the cupcakes. That video with the guy with the English accent, and he was able to swap out different labels on the wine bottle and all that good stuff. It remembers those changes that you make, and that's what's important. Now, in the event that you want maybe a multiple color layout, there is a wonderful tool that Photoshop makes available for you. It's called Cooler, and it's an extension. To get to it, you go to Window, Extensions, and there it should be Cooler, like ruler but with a K. And I love the Cooler extension. This is great. It's specifically for picking colors that work with one another in a pleasing way. So let's say Academy. I'll just kind of use the logo name that I've got here. So it'll bring up colors that might work out with different things. Now, some of these are actual school academies. Let's see, Art Academy of something, Cincinnati, Modern Academy, Wisconsin Academy. So let's say, you know, I want to pull some of these colors to use later. What I can do is I can actually view these online and kind of tinker with them. It'll open up the Cooler app in a browser. Looks like they renamed it for the newer version. So Adobe Color might be what you're going to look for if you're using the newest version. But same idea, you can adjust a custom color theme either by altering here or by altering the sliders. And it will make sure that they're all going to match one another in some way. So analogous, they're all going to be sort of spaced out in an equal way. Monochromatic, they're all going to be the same shade or tone of that particular color. Triad, think primary colors. Complementary, you're going to get things that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So they'll always have like a really nice pop of color between them because they're contrasting colors. Compound is usually going to be what gives you the most flexible options in that there's going to be colors that are in sort of the same family tree essentially, but they're going to visually work very nicely with one another. And you'll have a variety of pastel, vibrant colors, and muted colors. But the nice thing here is that you can pick a specific color if that's what you're looking to use. and get that hexadecimal code or the RGB, but you can also pick CMYK or other colors as well. But on top of that, you should be able to save that to your Creative Cloud account if you're signed into Adobe. So one of the nice things about that is you could actually save it and have it pop up in your swatches later on. So mine's a little bit different just because I'm on a slightly older version of Photoshop. But if I wanted to, say, grab these colors, it can add it to my swatches panel, click, and now all of those guys are added to my swatches panel. So I could, if I wanted to, grab that color and change it to this color. Oh, I like the lighter one, I think. Say OK, hit save, close it out, and voila. And now if I wanted to color code any other aspect of my design to that particular color set that I created, it would be very easy to get to because it's already saved to my swatches panel. So as a whole, I think that this project's going to give you a lot of freedom and creativity in regards to the way that you can kind of direct the assignment. I want to just go over the student example that I provided online, just so you can kind of get a feel for why certain decisions were made the way that he made them. Let's see. Kyle's was very good. Now, these files are going to be a little bit large. That's okay. You're going to have a lot kind of grouped together. So as I mentioned before, while this is loading, you are going to be grouping a lot of elements into one file. So rather than giving me 10 different Photoshop files, you're going to give me one Photoshop file with smart objects of each other item kind of embedded in it. So if you look at his folders, his layers here, here's the logo all by itself, and if I double click the smart object, it will open up his logo. I'll be able to look at all of the text that he chose and see how he developed every aspect of his logo design. So some of these are paths. Some of these are leaf shapes. These circles are just circles using the ellipse tool to make a vector fill. That's all it is. So he put each one of these together and he made this little triangle shape to kind of fill in the space between the grapes. But the whole darn thing is just different paths and filled shapes and text. So that's all his logo is initially. The poster has the logo, and he used a very nice sort of parchment paper backdrop. And it's intended to be like a wine bar. His business, fresh wine from the vine, is his slogan. And he included the bar hours, so this is intended to be hung in the business itself. Business card placed into the poster file, which is 18 by 24, so it's going to look small. That's okay. He put in all of his own information. And if I were to double click, I would see all of his information. His envelope, there it is at the proper size. His flyer. He's kind of showcasing a sampling He didn't do a very good job in indicating more information. Like, I would definitely recommend what time does this start was left out, but he's got the date and the address at the very least. And if you take a look, looks similar to the video, Smart Object video, huh? So that was very nice. Here he found a graphic for a shopping bag. I would rather see it on a regular bag, but this, you know, it works. Stationery. T-shirt for employees to perhaps wear. This is really nice. He actually, and I'll double click on this one. He applied a bevel and emboss effect onto the glass itself to make it appear as though the brand, the company brand, was etched into the wine. Oh goodness. Come on. There we go. Just trying to put my gradient in there. That's not what I want. There we are. So he just brought in a wine glass template, added a bevel and emboss, and added a noise filter, which just gives a little bit of grain, which is sort of what etched glass ends up looking like in the end, and then distorted it a little bit. So he's got his logo and slogan in one, business card, envelope, stationery, poster and flyer, shopping bag, shirt, and then he made 2 bonus items instead of 1. Wine glass was one, and this is a wine bottle koozie to keep cool wines cold, and it gives you a little handle. So that's essentially what this is. And you, because I provided you the PSD, you can double click and go into each and every one of his files and see how he put everything together. All right, and this is super clean, minimal. You know, he's catering towards the right client, people that enjoy wine. That's really all that we're looking for here. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Now, you can go as, you know, far out of the box as you like. It's just important to make sure that you are properly representing the right type of client. And part of the reason I've given this assignment as a final is it gives you a lot of flexibility as far as what imagery you get to use, how you use Photoshop. You know, I am asking that you work non-destructively and use the pen tool, but you're going to have a lot of freedom. Here he changed the color and then just placed his logo in over it. Looks like he put a very, very slight pattern overlay on it to make it look like it had some fabric texture to it. But also, one of the nice things about this is if you were hypothetically wanting to go into business for yourself, you know, whether that's something IT related, computer science related, this is going to give you the building blocks to sort of develop your own materials. You don't necessarily have to go to a designer and have them build your own business card and whatnot when you have the ability and the software to do so yourself and get exactly what you're looking for. It's really, you know, a nice perk to not have to hire someone to do something that's, you know, capable for you to do on your own and get something unique that isn't just a template off of, you know, Vistaprint.com or whatever. So this is just kind of a brief overview. I'm going to go into some more examples in the future. I will be doing a demo in the coming weeks of the extra credit opportunity that I posted as well. But again, that comes down to just remembering and understanding how to edit some of the restoration tools from the second project. So please shoot me some emails if you have any questions. Good luck, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all come up with.